The Democratic Party in the United States continues its track record of being an impotent failure, even as they were literally winning the shutdown fight. Just why is this happening, and why is this a disaster for the average American? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So, 8 U.S. senators are breaking ranks, Democratic senators breaking ranks and voting to end the shutdown fight. The exact number, in fact, that the Republican Party needs. Conveniently, all of these individuals are either retiring or are not up for re-election for at least 4 years. The decision, of course, was labeled a pathetic betrayal by anyone with common sense, and reflects just how unbelievably somehow the only entity weaker than literally an 82-year-old dementia-ridden president appears to be, well, 82-year-old dementia-ridden senators. So you may notice I'm pretty salty about this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like cheering that it's great that the government shutdown was going on. But like a lot of Americans, we said, listen, it's important to play hardball because healthcare is a pretty important issue to Americans. It's that thing that stops you from dying, right? And so in the interest of not having Americans die, it's worth it to inflict some pain. And it seemed to be a winning strategy for the Democrats. But, of course, for at least 8 senators, they decided, we need to cave. Now, here's the thing. What did they get in exchange for this immense showdown with the administration? Well, the answer is almost nothing. I'm not exaggerating, right? The question of, does the shutdown further the goal of achieving support for the extension of tax credits, which of course is the absolutely Democrat lawyer press release nonsense way of saying, did we actually make sure Americans can afford to get their health care? The answer, of course, was no. It didn't bring us in. It didn't bring anyone any closer to it. Now, this, of course, came days after Democratic candidates absolutely shellacked Republicans up and down the ballot in the first election since Trump returned to office. So clearly, voters were mobilized and felt like this sort of hardball Democratic Party was one they could get behind. Numerous polls have shown that Americans pinned the blame on the shutdown for the Trump and Republicans, including a Quinnipiac poll we have right here. Think about the government shutdown. Who do you think is more responsible, Republicans in Congress or Democrats in Congress? 45% of people blame Republicans, 39% blame Democrats, and 11% blame them both equally. So clearly, this was a winning issue for the Democratic Party, and voters were showing up, putting them in office, given the fact that they finally seemed like they were real fighters. They recognized that Trump's numerous policies around the shutdown inflicted harm that didn't have to happen. Right? Firing employees during the shutdown, that is not a thing that was legally required. Trump did it because he wanted to put those people out of work. Canceling SNAP benefits. Trump did that because he simply wanted to do it, right? There was money set aside to fund SNAP in the event of a shutdown. SNAP, by the way, in the United States is the taxpayer money that is used to make sure poor people can eat. And so, right, Trump also, there was no law that said he had to shut down air traffic control. Other long-term government shutdowns didn't have airports being closed off going into Thanksgiving weekend. All of these things collectively served to really show to the American public that harming them was mostly the Republicans doing. And Trump himself literally tweeted, guys, we lost the election because we are running this shutdown, right? And shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost the election tonight. There it is, right there. So this is an absolutely insane turn of events, given that literally the Democrats were winning on everything. The Republicans acknowledged that they needed to cave. And what did they get out of it? That's the crazy part. What did they get out of it? Almost nothing. So one, shout out to MSNBC for having the worst possible summary But they literally aren't even putting it, because most of the changes are actually like, let's see if Fox News can summarize it. It's really almost nothing. It's all it is was that it was a continuing resolution, some reversals of firing furloughed workers, which again, it's not clear that that was ever legal in the first place. Like they would have, the employee unions would have sued and gotten those workers restored in any case, because the administration can't just fire you for non-performance of duties when you are legally required to not perform your duties. Again, it's like firing you for not showing up to work at 3 a.m. when you're not scheduled to work. And again, there is a promise, a pinky promise, that there will be a bill that can be voted on in the Senate sometime down the line on healthcare subsidies, which I want to be clear, right now the Republican Party controls the Senate. So a vote would happen, the subsidies would lose, or possibly they would, in best case scenario, it would go to the House, where Speaker Johnson has said, I'm never going to let this thing get voted on. So it was a performative act, a performative vote that is condemned to fail. A promise from the Trump administration that they're going to adhere to the law they already had to adhere to. That's it. That's what they won. A couple of other rollbacks of, again, policies that happened during the shutdown, like funding SNAP, which, again, was never the debate. Both sides agreed on funding SNAP, as long as there was a, bill passed. And what I want to point out is that so all they did, all the Democrats' deal making got them was like band-aids over problems that the shutdown caused. The actual thing they were fighting for, they lost, despite literally every sign on earth showing that they were winning. It's absurd. But here's the thing. It'd be absurd if this were just performative. If this was all just political grandstanding. Here's the problem. The problem is that this was about people's lives. This is what really sticks with me, because we use the word like healthcare, but for most Americans, when they need to go to a doctor, it's because it's a life or death issue, right? Untreated diabetes kills you. Untreated cancer kills you. And in one forecast by the University of Pennsylvania, they thought that not extending the subsidies, introducing some additional work requirements and the Medicaid restrictions was likely going to, erect a series of obstacles that they can know is going to cause about 50,000 Americans to die, right? Every single year. For those of you keeping track at home, that's 25 9/11s a year, or a 9/11 every 2 weeks. 20,000 deaths will happen because of people coming off of ACA. 13,000 deaths will happen because of delays to a nursing home staffing rule that says nursing homes have to provide a certain level of staff, and 18,000 deaths a year because of loss of drug access, right? Those are diabetics who can't get their diabetes medication, or cancer patients who can't get their chemotherapy. So if you told me, hey, we're trying to save the lives of 50,000 Americans a year, we'd absolutely do it, right? What if there were 50,000 American troops trapped behind enemy lines? Would we spare any expense to free them, to prevent them from being killed? But somehow, when they're just regular Americans, we just say, fuck them, right? Now, that's why this fight was worth it. 50,000 Americans a year would see their children grow up, would see their grandkids, right? And instead, so we said, okay, right, we're going to have to shut down the government. People will get back paid. Some stuff's going to get delayed, but we need to show that this is worth fighting for. Americans' lives are worth fighting for. And so what happened now is that the Democrats said, well, you know what? Actually, guys, fuck them 50,000 people. Now, don't get me wrong. The Republicans were just like lining up to shoot them. But at least the Democrats were like, well, maybe we should take their ammunition out of the gun. And instead, their lives were so meaningless that they said, nah, I'm not even going to take the ammunition out of their guns. Just go let them shoot them. right? It's a level of capitulation that borders on acquiescence. And the thing that offends me so much is some of the reporting is that supposedly the real reason these Democrats caved, according to the New York Times, according to staffers, was one, the mere threat that the Senate filibuster would be removed and that we might have a majoritarian Senate was simply too dangerous. And they had to cave because Republicans might actually just bypass the filibuster and accidentally create a Senate that had the ability to govern and pass laws. But the political logic, and I want you guys to understand this and feel my same level of disgust. Again, think about the 50,000 lives. That's a town every year getting wiped off the map. Okay? The political logic, this is a direct quote from the New York Times, the political logic of the shutdown fight was inverted. If Democrats got the tax credits extended, that is to say, allowed Americans to afford their health care, if they won, they would be solving a huge electoral problem for Republicans, according to the New York Times. It continued, quote, if Republicans successfully allowed the tax credits to expire, if they won, they'd be handing Democrats a cudgel with which to beat them in the elections. Now, I want you to understand what that means. That means that fighting for Americans' lives is of ancillary importance, because if we allow the Republicans to continue to torture the American people and murder them on a wholesale level, then we will be able to use the prospect of saving them to win elections. Okay? This is not an analogy. This is literally the Democratic strategy. Let's allow the Republicans to starve children to death. And again, 40% of SNAP recipients are children, are American citizen children. Some of them will go hungry. Some of them may well starve to death. Let's allow them to starve to death, because we can run on a non-starvation platform. In fact, but by that logic, why doesn't the Democratic Party, why stop there? Why not encourage the Republican administration to wholesale murder Americans? Why don't they just have them round up political opposition, minority groups, anyone they want, and kill them, execute them like Iran style in a theater? And then Democrats can run on not televising the executions, right? Or you could have them torture them in the theater, right? In full HD. And Democrats can run on simply executing by firing squad, a merciful position. Why even do that? Why not just run like Terminator Skynet style death camps and have the Democrats run on reducing the rate of extermination? There's so many ways we can make this country, we can ensure Democrats can win elections. Now, you may notice that all of those solutions make this country exponentially worse. So then you have to ask yourself, is democracy working if torturing Americans is a strategy? If stealing food from children is an electoral move? Is this even, can we even claim that the Democrats have a discernible set of values that are any better than Republicans, right? Sure. The Republicans are loading the guns. But if the Democrats are handing them the ammunition, then is anyone not the murderer in this scenario? Again, it is so hard to not be just consumed with cynicism in the face of this sort of thing. To watch, again, it's like Ukraine was just a preview of what it means to abandon people who we pledged to help, right? If nothing else, the Ukrainians understand, as Americans do, that the American government has almost no discernible obligation to their citizens, let alone our allies, individuals we promised that we would help. It just doesn't exist. And the sooner perhaps people realize that we need better, leadership capable of doing anything in this country, the better off we'll be. And the sooner we stop counting on our elected representatives to help us in any way, shape, or form, to make this country a better place to live, it's almost impossible. Anyway, you should donate to people, candidates, if you can, who, if nothing else, to remind people that people who participated in this bloodbath should never hold elected office again. And you should donate and tweet and vote for opposition candidates in every primary that you can. Because doing otherwise will simply encourage this behavior. It will encourage the torture of Americans for their amusement. Anyway, guys, thanks so much to Alfred Chesky, Alan Lutz, Christine Schumann, Dan M., Deborah Oppenheimer, all of our Lieutenant tier members. You can now become a member on YouTube, Lieutenant Specialist tier and above, and you will get access to Combat Vet News, where we look at uncensored combat footage, Q&As, and more. See you in the next one. Cheers.